Welcome to session 15 in our study on the book of Romans. And today what we're going to be talking about, the title that you can see on the PowerPoint is What is Saving Faith? That's actually going to be the first half of this session. We're talking about what Paul is talking about, what is saving faith. In the second half, we're going to look at perversions of the gospel. And I think this is something a little surprising that you'll see when we get over there. But let me kind of put things in a nutshell here. In this first slide, we're going to be looking at the biblical definition of believing in Jesus or having faith in the gospel of Christ. Now, I know that there may be some folks that are watching this on the DVD, and because they're saved already, there'll be a tendency to skip past this part. And I want to say to them right now, don't do that. Don't skip past this part. Because we're going to be seeing some things that are very important. Not just important for us to know for ourselves, and they are indeed important for that reason, but important to know when dealing with other folks who have questions about salvation. This is the part that really equips us to get this down. So, in fact, as I said the last time, what we're actually doing here is getting a real good foundation laid, because everything that comes after is going to be built on this foundation of justification. So let's take a look at the scripture that gave us this phrase, believe in Jesus. This comes out of Romans chapter 3 and verse 26. To declare, I say, at this time his righteousness, that he might be just and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. Now this scripture is telling us three things. First, he says that he's declaring now God's righteousness. He's talking about that righteousness that's going to be imputed to us. The second thing is that God might be just in that he is doing this the right way. He is just in what he is doing. God cannot just look at a bunch of sinners and go, okay, you're righteous. The atonement has to be made. The redemption has to be carried out in a specific way. All the T's have to be crossed and all the I's have to be dotted. That has been done through the faithful performance of Jesus Christ. And because of that, God can be just. In other words, he will not violate his justice when he does for us what he does. The last part is the part that I want to focus on. The justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. Now, the means by which God justifies us, we've been saying all along, is that God does that by grace through faith. Now, we're not unfamiliar with that. We know about Ephesians 2:8-9, for by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves as the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. And we're familiar with that. But what I want to do is, I want to talk about it in conjunction with this word believeth, because this is where a lot of people get tripped up. Now I want to go through this slowly, because you never know who's watching or how much background they have or how much they understand. So I want to make sure that we kind of all have this down. And so the question is, when someone says he is the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus, what is Paul talking about when he says he who believeth in Jesus? What kind of belief is Paul talking about? Is he talking about believing that Jesus existed? Is he talking about believing that Jesus actually lived a historical life on this earth? And believing that he was a real person? Because some people are counting that for believing in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. Yeah, I believe he was real. We celebrate Christmas every year. Well, that's not what Paul has in mind. I just want to give you an idea here about belief, because he has already been telling us for 10 verses what it is we are supposed to believe. So what I want to show you is a different kind of believing. James chapter 2 verse 19. Thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. Well, the devils believe there's one God. Let me ask you this. Do the devils believe that Jesus Christ was a real person that lived on this earth? You bet they do. Does that mean they're saved? Well, absolutely not. That is not saving faith. Now I'm going to say something to take it a little further. Neither is saving faith believing that Jesus died on the cross. Now, let me qualify that. There were people present at the time that Jesus died on the cross who believed he was a real person, who saw him on that cross. Does that mean they were saved people? No. Because believing in Jesus isn't just believing he was a historical figure or that that guy died on the cross. It means you have to believe some things about who Jesus was and what he did on that cross. Because some of those, remember, made fun and mocked him. Hey, if you're really the Son of God, come down off the cross, and then we'll what? Believe you. See? So, as we work through these kinds of things, I just want to say that Paul is talking about believing in a context. And like I said, for the last 10 verses, he's been talking to us about what that context is. And that is that Jesus, as our substitute Redeemer, when he was on the cross, functioned in such a way that he provided complete and absolute, perfect redemption to such an extent that we are, by believing in him, be pardoned from every sin. And by I say substitute Redeemer, substitute in that he took our place, and Redeemer in that he provided the perfect redemption that was required by God. So I'm going to ask the question this way. When we say that we have trusted in Jesus as our Savior, are we saying that he perfectly and completely performed everything that was required by God to forgive our sins and justify us into eternal life without works of any kind? And if you can't say yes to every part of that sentence, then you do not have saving faith. So now you understand when God introduced this at the beginning of the book of Romans, it's like this. If you can't get this part settled, edification is not an issue. This has got to get done in your head. So here's what I want to show you, and we'll put it up on the PowerPoint here. God is showing us some things, and I want to go through them one by one, and you'll notice we're going to start with these 10 verses. We're going to start in verse 20. Here's the first thing. God is showing us that no flesh will be justified by the deeds of the law. Now, you know what that means. There's nothing you can do, nothing I can do to get ourselves justified before God. Here's the second. That's verse 20. Verse 21 says that the righteousness of God without the law has now been revealed. So God is going to give us his righteousness, but it's going to be without the law. The law is not going to have anything to do with it. You see the connection here, right? Nobody's going to be justified by keeping the law. Therefore, if you're going to get God's righteousness, it's not going to be by keeping the law. It's going to be by another means. Verse 22. God's righteousness is offered to everyone, and it will come upon all that believe. And that's what we're doing, is we're defining believing. Here's the next one. Perfect righteousness is the standard for escaping God's wrath, and therefore the whole world is guilty. The standard that God's measuring against is perfection. And so if we're short of being perfect, we're guilty. And so that's verse 23. Now, verse 24. Through the redemption provided by Jesus Christ, you can be justified. That means declared righteous freely by his grace. Now that's the really good news part of this equation. But you see what God's doing is He's, in these verses, all we've done is follow them. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. He's given you a progression here, starting out by telling you it's not by any deeds that you do. God's righteousness is going to be offered without the law. And then and everybody's guilty because the standard is perfection. And He says, but through the redemption that Jesus provided, we can be justified or declared righteous freely by His grace, which means we don't earn it. Here's the next verse, 25. God set Jesus forth to be a propitiation. That means a full and complete and perfect payment. It means that He did it exactly the way it was supposed to be done. Met all the legal obligations of a redeemer. That word propitiation has a whole lot built into it. But when He says He set Jesus forth to be a propitiation in order for you to have remission of sins. Well, actually, I said that wrong, and I want to correct it right there because I just noticed it. Actually, there's two verses that are being used here, and I want to straighten this out, and then I'll correct that on that PowerPoint in the future. If you remember, we defined remission last time. That remission is not for us. That remission was for, I said us because I was in that pronoun tense when I was putting all this together. But actually, He's talked about the remission of sins that are, anybody remember? Past. Oh, good. Great. Remission of sins that are past. And remission means what? Thanks. Postpone the judgment. Why was God postponing the judgment for sins that are past? That's right, because the redemption hadn't taken place yet, and God says, I'm going to wait, I'm going to postpone the judgment, then when the sacrifice gets made, I'll make that application to you. Then you don't just have remission, you have what? Forgiveness, full pardon. So I said us, I should have said them, but in my mind, when I'm putting this together, I'm doing the us thing, okay? So bad pronoun choice on my part. The Scripture does not say us. For us, it talks about forgiveness. For them, it talked about remission. Different item. And you've got that down, I can tell. All right. Verse 26, God's justice, having been so satisfied by Jesus' work on our behalf. I cannot get these pronouns right, can I? I even have never mind. I even have an English book. Never read it. I think it's propping up a table leg or something. God's justice, having been so satisfied by Jesus' work on your behalf, can now work for you, declaring you to be righteous, since God has imputed His righteousness to your account because of the faith of Christ. Somebody tell me, not the faith in Christ, the faith of Christ. What is the faith of Christ? Thank you. It is the faithful performance, it's the fidelity of Jesus Christ to do everything God's justice required Him to do. We put our faith in Christ, but it's because of the faith of Christ that we can depend on Him. Does that make sense? See, remember we did that work. I think Clinton was gone. That he's giving me that look like he gave me yesterday. But it's that faith in. And I'll just we'll just say this here. Faith in Christ is what we have. In other words, we're trusting in what He did. What He did was the faith of Christ. This is His faithful performance. He did everything that was needed to be done. And when we trust in Him, it is because He faithfully performed. That makes sense? Don't let the new versions change that preposition up. They almost all change it from the faith of Christ to faith in Christ, and that destroys the meaning of what's going on in those verses. So, to read that back again, God's justice is so satisfied. You understand, that's what was against us to begin with, God's justice. God looked at those sins in Romans 1 and said, those that do these things are worthy of what? Death. Almost threw that out of my hand. Worthy of death. And his justice demanded because of that. What Jesus did was so complete that that thing which was against us now rises up and testifies for us. The very thing that was condemning us is now exonerating us. I mean, it's an amazing turnabout. Why? Because now it no longer sees our sin debt, because that sin has been, what's happened to our sin? Okay, it's all been forgiven, it's paid for, it's pardoned. And what did we get in exchange? God's righteousness. So when God's justice looks at, is God's righteousness perfection? Yes. When God's justice looks at Milt, he sees perfection. And that justice that was against Milt before now rises up and declares him to be justified before God because of the faithful performance of Jesus Christ. What did Milt do? He put his faith in that. That's what that's about. All right, now, the question is, when we went through all these pieces, verse by verse, that's what's going on, those 10 verses when we get up to, well, it's going to take us to verse 30, but when you get up to him which believeth in Jesus, this is what he expects you to have in your head about believing. And as we said before, knowing what those verses say are not difficult. It's can you take God's word for that? Can you believe him when he says that? That's the issue of trust and faith and belief. Knowing that what God said is exactly what's been done. Okay, what you're to be convinced of, and here's what God's trying to do in your thinking, is he is trying to convince you of how perfect and how complete Jesus' work in his death, burial, and resurrection was on your behalf. Paul is going to great lengths to lay all of this out. And there is one requirement, one necessary requirement. Because if you look, you say, okay, Jesus paid for the sins of the world, right? So is all of the world automatically saved? No. There is one necessary ingredient. And here it is. Faith. That faith in those things we listed here, that is believing in Jesus. That's what that faith is. When we exercise faith, God's justice responds to that faith, and now everything that Jesus provided for is now given to us and imputed to us. And that solves everything. Okay, now, can a person think they're saved and really not be saved? The answer is yes. So, in order to make this clear, I want to give you some scenarios in which this would take place. So, follow along as we do this here. Saving faith, I'm sorry, well, before we do that, I guess I'm doing this one first. Where did I leave that off? You know, I got these out of order in my notes, but I guess it doesn't matter. How did I do that? Saving faith means that you understand and believe the following. Here's the first one. That you're a rotten sinner and you deserve God's wrath. And the reason I have the word rotten in there is because people have a tendency to think, well, I'm not perfect, but I'm really pretty good. When God looks at our sin, he doesn't look at us and go, wow, you guys are almost deity. God looks at us and he goes, you guys are terrible. And I put that word rotten in there because I don't want anyone to skate by thinking, because if someone says, well, I'm a sinner, but I'm not rotten. Well, then you're worse than you think you are. You're a self-denying rotten sinner. Okay. And we deserve God's wrath. That's the way. If you don't believe that, you will never see your need of the Savior. If you don't believe you're a sinner and you're worthy of God's wrath. Here's the second thing that you have to understand and believe. That you have no excuse. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just taking Romans 1 and going through the thing the way the curriculum laid it out. You have no excuse. You have sinned even when you knew you were doing something wrong, and you still did it. People can say, hey, I'm a Gentile, the law wasn't given to me, I didn't know it was sin. We knew there was stuff that was wrong, and we did it. We're guilty. God said, I can judge you by the law in your own heart, and you're guilty. That's how rotten we are. And then we act like we have it. You know, the funny thing is we never, ever, ever have to teach our kids to lie to get out of trouble. You know what you have to do? You have to teach them to tell the truth. Because it's in us automatically to escape trouble. Well, we have no excuse. Once you get to that point, you realize if God doesn't do something for you, your goose is cooked. Here's the next thing you have to understand. By the way, I say understand and believe because if you don't understand it, you don't know what you're believing. You have to understand what it is that you're believing, right? You can't just go, well, whatever it is, I believe it. Not good enough. You have trusted Jesus Christ as you have to understand and believe that you have trusted Jesus Christ as your only and all-sufficient Savior, and that His work as your substitute Redeemer is the only way you can obtain eternal life. That really cuts to the heart of the issue. It is only because of what He did, only because of what He did, that we have any hope of eternal life. And that's what our trust is in. That's why I keep using this term, all-sufficient Savior. Because it's either all Him or it's nothing. Do you know why? Because by the deeds of the law there shall no flesh be justified in His sight. If you're dependent on any of your works, you are cooked. Here's the next one. It is only through the work of Jesus on the cross that sins are forgiven. Not because I chastise myself. I'm going to fast 3 times a week. I'm going to do like Martin Luther, and I'm going to go up those wooden steps on my bare knees till they bleed all over the staircase and show God what penance that I'm producing so that He'll be merciful on me and forgive my sin. You know, people did that. They took whips and whipped themselves until their backs bled and, you know, and just did all kinds of things to torture themselves, thinking that God would look down and say, okay, you have done this thing, and so I'll forgive your sin. None of that has the power to pardon sin. None of that. The only thing that has power to pardon sin is the substitutionary death of Jesus on the cross. That's all. So, knowing that and believing that is an essential component of having saving faith. Here's the next one. You are trusting His redemptive work alone for your complete salvation. Just Him. That's it. Here's the next one. You understand that sincere works, good deeds, keeping of the law, practice of religion cannot save you, cannot forgive your sins, cannot impute righteousness to your account, cannot declare you to be forever justified before God. No, not joining a church, not being baptized, not being a deacon, not singing in the choir, not being a preacher, not doing... There is nothing we can do that can do any of those things. Those are all spiritual things that we are bankrupt to do on our own. As a result, because if you've ever sinned one time, guess what? You're disqualified. So you're no longer qualified. You have to meet the standard of perfection. So if you've missed that standard of perfection, you will have to rely on the only one who was able to meet that standard of perfection, and that was Jesus Christ. And He makes that that atonement for us. Here's the next one. That Jesus provided such satisfaction to God's justice that there can never be a single sin laid to your account that was not completely, finally, and perfectly covered, atoned for, and forgiven under the blood of the Son of God. Not a single sin. He either covered them all or he didn't cover them at all. That's how that works. Now, those are the things that a person has, and let me just look here because I kind of jumped ahead of myself here. Oh, you know what? We're not done. Here we go. Only by the faith of Jesus Christ is God able to forgive you of every single sin you've committed and ever will commit. Only because of what Jesus faithfully performed can God do that. Because He has to be just in doing it. And the only way He can is for Jesus to have faithfully performed everything that was needed in redemption. Here's the next one. Only by the faith of Jesus Christ, the faithful performance of Jesus Christ, our substitute Redeemer, can God impute His righteousness to you and declare you to be perfectly righteous without works of any kind at any time. Do you get this message? I know we say beating a dead horse, but it's because we have to. Look, more people than you would believe are unclear about this issue. So because of that, what I want to do is I want to go back here and talk about, can a person think they're saved when indeed they have not exercised saving faith? The answer is yes. And if my PowerPoint is anything like it's supposed to be, that should be the next thing that we're looking at here after we read this. Wow. Non-meritorious faith. You understand what non-meritorious means? It's not a work. It's not anything you can get credit for. Okay? Non-meritorious faith alone is the only and necessary requirement to obtain God's pardon and justification unto eternal life, which excludes any and all works on the believer's part to be performed at any time forever. Everybody got that? I'm just going to take a chance and hit the next slide. Who knows where it'll take us? This is a real adventure. A blind hog found an acorn. Here we are. You can think you're saved, but actually not be saved if you do not believe that Jesus completely and perfectly accomplished all that God's justice required in order for you to be forgiven and declared eternally righteous. That's a long one, but look, let me break it down this way. If you don't believe that everything that God required to save you was accomplished by Jesus, you don't have saving faith. Doesn't matter what you believe. If you don't believe that, you don't have saving faith. Here's the next one. If you believe that somehow it is you and Jesus in a partnership that will deal with your sins, it would go like this, or some variation of it. Jesus died to forgive them, but now I've got to do my part and try to live it. If you think it's you and Jesus, and together y'all are going to take care of it, you don't have saving faith. Because you have placed your faith not just in Jesus, but in your own ability to live up to it. And the Bible has already told you that by the deeds of the law there will be no flesh justified in His sight. It's the righteousness of God without the law that is now being made manifest. Your part is not works. Your part is what? Faith. That's your part. And that gets no merit. Because if you believe it's true, if you believe it and you trust it, that you didn't do anything to accomplish it, you just believed it. Now, you also have the ability to not believe it. And if a person says, well, I believe Jesus died on the cross, I believe he was the Son of God, I believe he was in the tomb for 3 days, and I believe he rose from the dead, but I believe that I've got to do my part, listen to me carefully, that's not saving faith according to Romans chapter 3. When we started this session off, I started you in verse 20, remember? And we worked down 20, 21, 22, 23, 20, worked all the way down to 26. And I showed you what Paul said when he says in verse 26 that God is the justifier of him that believeth in Jesus. And for those verses previous, he qualified what believing in Jesus was. That's why I say you can believe. Isn't that strange? Because you say, yeah, I can believe he's the Son of God and that he died on the cross and I can still not be saved. Yes, because at the end of the day, if you're trusting anything you can do, then your faith isn't in him, it's in you. The Bible's already told you what's happening if your faith is in what you do. So, it's not us in a partnership. Not salvation, you understand? Now don't confuse this. Once you get saved on the timeline of my life, here's where I'm born, all right? I come along and at a certain point, this is my salvation. Let me just abbreviate it. Here's my salvation. When I get saved, I am trusting solely in I'm trusting in the faith of Christ. That's it. That's the only way the Bible describes it. I can't, look, it doesn't matter what I say to you. If I say anything different from that, I have lied to you. If I say, look, you know what? You get saved here by trusting in Jesus, but you also, look, as far as salvation goes, it is him and him alone. It's his death, burial, and resurrection, not anything else added to that. That's it. After I get saved now, do I want to live for him? Yes, I do. Should I work for him? Yes, I should. But none of this has anything to do with my salvation. This has to do with my service after I'm saved. You know why? Because the power to really live unto God cannot be exercised until you've been saved. A lost person doesn't have the power to live unto God. You say, well, they can do good works, and the Bible talks about that. The Bible talks about all those good works. In fact, here's what it said all the way back to Isaiah. Your righteousness is as what? Filthy rags. You think you're going to add to what Jesus did with that? Let me take the best filthy rags I have and I'll put it with Jesus' perfect atonement, and that'll somehow enhance what he did. See, that's why it's all a free gift. If you have anything you have to do, it is no longer grace, right? Grace is a free gift. Now, I am not by any stretch, I don't think anybody here thinks that, but just in case someone's watching on the video, I'm not advocating that once you get saved, you can just go out and live a life of sin and God's fine with that. Well, of course that's not true. God's not fine with that. Are you still his child? Yes, you are. Are you still justified unto eternal life? Yes, you are. Is he stuck with you? Yes, he is. Will you regret living that way? Yes, you will. Not because you'll wind up in the lake of fire. You'll regret it for other reasons that a believer will have. But that has nothing to do with your salvation. Look, Paul's driving this home because we can't afford to get this wrong. Look at this next one. You can think you have salvation, but actually not, if you believe that his propitiatory death is incomplete without some kind of work on your part. At the end of the day, your faith is in something. Your faith is in Christ. Paul never says Christ and your works, or Christ and your deeds, or Christ and anything. He never says Christ and. There's nothing added to that. That's it. If I say to you, look, if you'll see me after the service, I'll give you $100. I'm sorry, Monty will give you $100. You see me after the service, and you go, what do I got to do to get my $100? I go, all you had to do was see me. And if you say, well, I got to do something. I go, no, just $100. Well, so surely there's got to be something. Look, the flesh likes to get involved in it. Then it feels like it deserves it somehow. The flesh loves works. You do know that. The flesh loves religion. If I can just go through a religious practice, then I've somehow earned a little bit of it and I feel better about it. Here's what God wants you to feel good about. You're a dirty, rotten sinner. There is nothing, absolutely nothing you can do to redeem yourself. Anything that could be done was all done by Jesus and Jesus alone, and you'll just come to Him. You just believe Him and you can be saved. That's it. That's it. And the flesh goes, there's something wrong with that. Because my flesh is like everybody else's flesh. When I didn't understand the doctrine, you know what my flesh wanted to do? You know, I can remember praying and saying, now God, you know how many times I've done this, and I'm trying to bargain with Him and, you know, show how good a person I am. God's saying, hey, I know you a lot better than you know yourself, evidently, because you're not that good. But it's Him. If we believe that Jesus' death is incomplete without something for us to do, that is not Bible faith. It may be some denomination's brand of faith, but it's not Bible faith. Here's the next one. If you believe that His work on the cross may have been enough to forgive your sins, but they'll somehow be revisited if you don't do something, then you did not believe His work was complete, did you? Somehow His work was lacking, and He needs your help. That is not saving faith. Here's the next one. If you think He only paid for the sins you've committed up to the day of your salvation, but after that you have to live it in order to continue in salvation, once again, you believe His work was incomplete. This is a really bad illustration, but it's the best I can think of right here. If you hire someone to do something for you, let's say that you're building onto your house and you hire a contractor and you draw up plans and you say, here's what I want built and I want to know how much this is going to be turnkey. All I want to do is walk in it and it's finished. What's it going to take? And he gives you a price and you agree. When you walk in that thing at the end, are you expecting that you're going to have to maybe tape and float the seams on the sheetrock? Are you expecting that you're going to have to lay some carpet? Are you expecting you're going to have to put in some light fixtures? Or you're going to have to, have some plugs wired? Are you expecting to do those? No. All of that should be finished. Well, the only thing God has ever led you to believe is that your salvation was 100% turnkey provided for by the work of His Son. He has never led you to believe anything else. In fact, He's gone out of His way to tell you it's not your works, it's not the deeds of the law, it's not your righteousness, it's not your good intentions, it's not your religious practice, it's not your anything. It is all up to Him. Because we have been proved to be sinners. That disqualifies us from ever even leaving a fingerprint on our salvation package. As a result, we trust that if He didn't get it for us, it just didn't get done. That's the only way the Bible presents salvation. So when He says this, that we have to live it in order, our faith really wasn't in that. Now, is it any wonder, here's the next verse. That was verse 26. The justifier of him that believeth in Jesus. Here's the next verse. Where is boasting then? It is excluded. What is boasting about? Look what I did. Look what I did. Hey, me and Jesus, we handled this. Remember that little shake and bake commercial years ago? And the little girl would go, and I helped. This is one meal you don't get to help in. This is one meal that's all about what He does. All about what He does. I'm begging you. Listen, I don't know anybody's heart in here. I'm pretty sure I'm talking to saved people, but look, on the video or here, I am begging you, make sure you get this thing settled once and for all. Good intentions are not enough. They are Satan's substitute for the real thing. Do not be confused about this issue. Now I want to show you this whole verse. Look at verse 26. To declare, I say at this time, His right. Whose righteousness? His. Does He ever talk about our righteousness having a part? No. That He might be just and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. That's what we've been talking about. Where is boasting then? It's excluded. By what law? Of works? Nay. Now I want to talk about nay for a minute. Nay is the strongest no you can find. It is an emphatic no. It means by no means whatsoever. And that word is not passé. We use that word in Congress every day when we vote on bills, either yay or nay, and that's the very terminology they use. Because that's the strongest no you can find. Which, by the way, all the new versions have taken every nay out of your Bible. By what law? What's he talking about? He's talking about a legal precedent here. By what law can God justify him that believeth in Jesus? How can He do that? By a law of works? No. In the strongest possible terms, no. But by the law of what? Faith. You want to know the only thing you can do is exercise non-meritorious faith. That's it. That's it. That is it. It is faith. And when you put your faith in Him, what He did, God's justice responds to that faith, and instantly full pardon of sin, imputed righteousness, justified before God, an eternal standing in Jesus Christ is instantly given to us. And that's the law that God's court operates on. It's the law of faith. Now, when he's talking about the law, here's mentioned law twice. Neither one of those is the Mosaic law. He's talking about a law by which something operates. Like the law of gravity. Here's how this works. I drop it, it falls down. You know what? Doesn't matter how many times I do this, it never fails. That's the law is in operation. God says there's a law by which I can justify those that believe in what my Son has done. And that law is not a law of works. That law is a law of faith. That's the law. And if we try to add anything to that, we have violated that law. And this is, look, it's eternity here at stake. It's eternity. So we have to make sure that we get this down. All right, now I'm kind of running out of time here, so let me do this one quickly. perversions of the gospel of Christ and problems with justification and salvation by those who do not regard God's word rightly divided. I have 4 quick things to show you to finish out this session. I guess I could show them to you in the next session. In fact, I think I will. That way we'll have time to do that. Because this next session has something odd to it, and you'll see. Anyway, we'll do that. We'll come back and talk about, because there are some cliches that have been coined to talk about saving faith, and we've all heard them. When you see them, you've heard them. If you're like me, you've even used them. And you didn't, when you did, you didn't think about what you were saying. Because these are actually a perversion of the true gospel. I want to show these to you because we need to make our vocabulary line up with the Bible instead of just the contemporary way of saying things. Let's get the biblical way of saying it. That way we have no mistake about terminology and what it is that we're talking about. Okay? So let's take a quick break. This second session is going to be shorter. I'll explain to you why.